So as an exercise, I want to challenge you to go and make those recommendations even better. So let's talk about some ideas I have, and maybe you'll have some of your own too that you can actually try out and experiment, get your hands dirty, and try to make better movie recommendations. Okay, so there's a lot of room for improvement still in these recommendation results, and as you can see, there's sort of an art to it. There's a lot of decisions to be made about how to weigh different recommendation results based on your rating of that item that it came from, or what threshold you want to pick for the minimum number of people that rated two given movies. So there's a lot of things you can tweak, a lot of different algorithms you can try, and you can have a lot of fun with trying to make better movie recommendations out of the system. So if you're feeling up to it, I'm challenging you to go and do just that. So here are some ideas on how you might actually try to improve upon the results in this lecture. So you can just go ahead and play with the item-based-cf.ipython notebook file and tinker with it. So for example, we saw that the correlation method actually had some parameters for the correlation computation. We used Pearson in our example, but there are other ones you can look up and try out, see what it does to your results. We used a minimum period value of 100. Maybe that's too high, maybe it's too low. We just kind of picked it arbitrarily. What happens if you play with that value? If you were to lower that, for example, I would expect you to see some new movies maybe you never heard of, but might still be a good recommendation for that person. Or if you were to raise it higher, you would see, nothing but blockbusters. So sometimes you have to think about what the result is that you want out of a recommender system. Is there a good balance to be had between showing people movies that they've heard of and movies that they haven't heard of? How important is discovery of new movies to these people versus having confidence in the recommender system by seeing a lot of movies that they have heard of? So again, there's sort of an art to that. We can also improve upon the fact that we saw a lot of movies in the results that were similar to Gone with the Wind, even though I didn't like Gone with the Wind. We weighted those results lower than similarities to movies that I enjoyed, but maybe those movies should actually be penalized. If I hated Gone with the Wind that much, maybe similarities to Gone with the Wind, like The Wizard of Oz, should actually be penalized and, lowered in their score instead of raised at all. So that's another simple modification you can make and play around with. There are probably some outliers in our user rating data set. What if I were to throw away people that rated some ridiculous amount of movies? Maybe they're skewing everything. You could actually try to identify those users and throw them out as another idea. And if you really want a big project, if you really want to sink your teeth into this stuff, you could actually evaluate the results of this recommender engine by using the techniques of train test. So what if instead of having an arbitrary recommendation score that sums up the correlation scores of each individual movie, actually scale that down to a predicted rating for each given movie? So if the output of my recommender system were movie and my predicted rating for that movie, in a trained test system, I could actually try to figure out how well do I predict movies that user has in fact watched and rated before. Okay, so I could set aside some of the ratings data and see how well my recommender system is able to predict the user's ratings for those movies. And that would be a quantitative and principled way to measure the error of this recommender engine. But again, there's a little bit more of an art than a science to this. Even though the Netflix prize actually used that error metric called root mean squared error is what they used to be particular, is that really a measure of a good recommender system? Basically, you're measuring the ability of your recommender system to predict the ratings of movies that a person already watched. But isn't the purpose of a recommender engine to recommend movies that a person hasn't watched that they might enjoy? Those are two different things. So unfortunately, it's not very easy to measure the thing you really want to be measuring. So sometimes you do kind of have to go with your gut instinct. And the right way to measure the results of a recommender engine is to measure the result that you're trying to promote through it. Maybe I'm trying to get people to watch more movies or rate new movies more highly or buy more stuff. Running actual controlled experiments on a real website would be the right way to optimize for that, as opposed to using train test. So, I went into a little bit more detail there than I probably should have, but the lesson is you can't always think about these things in black and white. Sometimes you can't really measure things directly and quantitatively, and you have to use a little bit of common sense, and this is an example of that. Anyway, here's some ideas on how to go back and improve upon the results of this recommender engine that we wrote. So please feel free to tinker around with it, see if you can improve upon it however you wish to, and have some fun with it. This is actually a very interesting part of the course, so I hope you enjoy it. So go give it a try, see if you can improve on our initial results there. There's some simple ideas there to try to make those recommendations better and some much more complicated ones too. Now there's no right or wrong answer. I'm not going to ask you to turn in your work, and I'm not going to review your work. You just have to play around with it and get some familiarity with it and experiment and see what results you get. That's the whole point, just to get you more familiar with using Python for this sort of a thing and get more familiar with the concepts behind item-based collaborative filtering. So have some fun with it. See what you come up with. If you do come up with some really good results, make sure you post those for all of our other students to see in the discussions here. I'd be curious to see what you come up with. So have at it.